being born into this industry as my
Uh,
sister and I were. My cousin, we all kind of grew up in it. We've been, in senior housing working since we were 13. So we have always kind of been in the front row seat of watching, just always the interactions between families and, children and their parents and the difficulties. And I think over time, as I've, gotten older in my own life and, my parents are getting older and my grandparents are getting older and, needing more and more care, what you start to see when you have the experience of senior living behind you is that people want to bury their head in the sand
mhm.
and hide from their reality. And because they're burying their heads in the sand, they let things go way too long. Even in my own family, we own assisted livings. You would think that this would just be like a no brainer. But it's not. Even with my grandparents, it's baby steps. It's, bringing people into their house, whether it's PT and OT skill, just to kind of get them strengthened up. Some private care if they're just falling short in a few places. But really starting to recognize that, we can't bury our heads in the sand.
Welcome to The Move In, a senior living marketing podcast from Unlock Health, a full service marketing partner for the aging services industry. Join us for candid conversations exploring the latest marketing strategies with the senior living community leaders and innovative solution partners who are moving our industry forward. Together, we'll build a community to build better communities. What responsibility do we have as marketers to support families long before the tour? Hello, I'm Larry Williams, and welcome to the Move in Senior Living Marketing powered by Unlock Health. The answer is clear. It's our responsibility to meet families where they are who are often overwhelmed, uncertain, and quietly searching for answers. Long before anyone schedules a tour or fills out a contact form, they're facing incredibly tough questions such as, what's the best for mom? How do we afford it? And am I doing the right thing? And if we're not showing up with empathy, education, and real guidance, they'll either find help somewhere else or worse, they'll wait too long to ask for it. Today, I'm joined by Sara Robertson, CEO of the Arbors and Ivy and founder of the Aging Parent Solution. We're diving deep into how you as a marketer or operator can become the North Star families desperately need before the crisis moment. Because this work, it's about more than occupancy, it's about impact. Here's a glimpse of what we unpacked in this conversation. Educate before the crisis. Build trust by answering questions before families ask them. Also, support the sandwich generation. Speak directly to the emotional load of today's decision makers. And be the North Star, not the last resort. Marketing with empathy is not optional. It's your edge. You're going to love Sara's insights and heart. Let's jump into the conversation. We are on the move in senior living marketing, and I tend to say this a lot, but it's always true. I have a friend with me, another friend, Sara Robertson. I am very fortunate that I have so many friends in this space that I can reach out to and have these conversations. And Sara, you're another friend, and thank you for joining us today on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Love to be here.
Yes, it's something we've been discussing for a while, and so I'm glad like our schedules align so we can have this conversation. So Sarah's the is the CEO of the Arbors and Ivy Assisted Living Residential Communities, and we speak about that side of business quite a bit. We also discuss family life as well. You know, our kids are about the same age
Yeah.
ranges, and we discuss that. So you're the CEO of a thriving group of communities. You're a devoted mom, so that's keeping you busy enough as it is. But today we're actually going to have a different conversation, as you're the founder of the Aging Parent Solution, and I've been really excited to speak with you about this because this is something you and I've spoken about, which is this, having these resources for families is much needed. So, again, thank you for joining us today. And before we go any further, can you give us just a little insight of first with the Arbors and Ivy Assisted Living, what you're doing on that front, and then also on the Aging Parent Solution? I think that would be a good foundational start before we get into the rest of our conversation.
Sure. That sounds great. So the Arbors and the Ivy, we are based in Connecticut. We are a family owned and operated business covering Massachusetts and Connecticut. I am third generation in the family. We took over the business in about 2016 when the second generation kind of retired. And we've been thriving. We obviously have been through our ups and downs, and it's been a lot. But post pandemic, we've made a lot of great recovery. And we're really thriving and we're doing great. And it's just been very exciting, keeping up with trends as we move forward, really starting to kind of shift our focus to more of the value based care models, and just looking towards the future of what the next generation who's coming in, which are these baby boomers, what are they going to be looking for? Because it's definitely going to be different than what we've been seeing. So just trying to stay out ahead of that has been really on our radar.
Yeah, that's great. And kudos to you and your team. You mentioned the third generation. I'm sure each, really phase it continues to evolve. And again, for you and your team to see that and continue to look towards the future, I think far too often in life we see what worked in the past and we want to replicate that model. But now in senior living, we're looking towards a different, really just this brightening of what's the opportunity ahead in speaking to those groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking about change actually yesterday, and like just the incredible changes that have happened over the past 30 years is pretty astounding. If you look at where we started right in the 1990s with like institutional settings, right through integrated care system to the evolving technology, from driven by COVID-19. So I think it's just been such drastic changes, from, a social care model to a lifestyle care model to now a la carte and holistic care. And really just it just keeps changing and evolving, and it's been wonderful to be part of.
Yeah, it's been really fun to be a part of it as well in terms of serving these communities, because what we think about in terms of senior living in the past is not what it is now and not where it's going either. And so there's a lot of excitement that we see in this space, and a lot of really forward progress. And I think that's one thing that we continue to I don't know, find encouragement from, which is really helping, people find like live their best life, and that's going to continue to evolve. So thank you for that. And tell us a little bit more about the aging parent solution. I want to get your insights on that and what you're doing on that front.
Sure. So the Aging Parent Solution, we founded about a year ago, my sister and I. And the reason behind that was, being in senior living for as long as we've been senior living, people, family, friends, just people, friends of friends, will consistently reach out to all of us and say, hey, like my mom or dad is going through this really rough situation. They had a fall or they ended up in a rehab, and I don't know what to do next for them. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And so we were helping people like on the side, like left and right, try to, navigate the world of senior care. And in doing so, we realized that, understanding everything that we knew, we took for granted, right? Like we just thought it was like common information. And you realize when you talk to people who are outside of this industry, really how little they actually know or understand about everything. Really, it's the aging process in general, right? It's the next steps, it's the
Yeah.
senior living options, it's all of the health insurance options. What are all the Medicare and Medicaid options, veteran options? The list goes on and on and on. You have the dementia journey, you have end of life care. There are so many components to aging, and there's so
Yeah.
many components to senior care outside of senior living that
Hmm.
I think need to be addressed as we move forward. And so really that's where the idea came from. But what we are is basically a senior education company. We have created courses. Our one that's live right now is Unlocking Senior Care, all about the aging process, senior living, really the whole process from the start to the finish. Over the summer, we will be rolling out our two new programs, which is the Dementia Journey and the Final Watch, which is the end of life course that we have. So that should really give people, the ability to kind of log in and attend these courses. You have access to it for your lifetime, forever, and they have all the resources at their fingertips. So basically, all of these resources that we have created and utilized in our senior living, over the past 30 years, we've taken things that we know work and we've created resources in a library for all of our clients to use. We also have an open community so people can come in and they can just kind of talk with us. We
Yeah.
moderate it. They can chat with us. They can say, hey, I'm having this problem with my mom right now. This is what I got going on, and really find a way to connect with other people who are going through the exact same situation.
Yeah.
It can feel nice to feel like you are not in this alone, right? It's a very lonely process. Even within certain family dynamics, right? There's typically one sibling who is carrying the load. And that one sibling can often, we see them get very, very overwhelmed in this
Sure.
process, and they just want somebody to talk to. So we have that in place. We offer support groups and monthly webinars with different guest speakers and experts in the field. And then we take it a step further and we offer some coaching calls. So if you want us to kind of help assist you, but not hire us to case manage for you, we can have calls with you and tell you how to navigate these next steps and the things that you should be asking and the things that you should be saying when you're looking. And then we can take it the last step further, which is you can hire us for case management support. So I have certified case managers on staff. They've worked for me for the past 30 years. They're actually a mother-son team, and they've been with me forever. Speak very highly of them. I love
Yeah.
them. And I think that they do amazing things for the senior population. And they both have, an educational component behind what they do. Karen has like that social work piece that is just incredible. And Ed is just an educational guru, and
Yeah.
he just has so much skill and knowledge to share. So that's who's kind of driving my case management aspect. And we're happy to help anybody, navigate any of it. We can come in and we can do an assessment. We can meet with the family. We can say, we can advocate for you. We can help you apply for these programs, help you apply for VA benefits and different Medicare programs or Medicaid programs. So, and also your long-term care insurance covers case management, which a lot of
Mm.
people don't know. So if somebody has long-term care insurance, they can inquire to find out if that would cover our services, which means that we can jump right on board with you and help you navigate all of this really free of charge. So there's a lot of good stuff behind this.
It's a lot of great stuff behind this.
Yeah,
I'm so happy to speak with you again. I find that we typically talk about really everything on the Arbors and Ivy and having those conversations. I'm so glad that you and I just get to sit down and chat about this because this is a much needed platform.
it really is.
We talk about, this is a challenging time. It's full of a lot of emotional heaviness, and you kind of covered a lot of this of those next steps and how to really not support your parents, but how to guide your parents, and then you're bringing in all these other factors. And I thought about that when I was at the Senior Housing News Sales and Marketing Conference, which we were going over, just really some topics, and it hit me how emotional and how complex this is because it goes into some of the stuff you spoke about. Then you bring into the financial aspects, leaving the house, going to a new place. It's a lot of changes when there's a lot of vulnerability at the same time. And one thing I really appreciate is you saying that there's these resources, but at the same time, you're creating a community. I think far
Mhm.
too often people probably feel alone going through this.
Yeah.
I mentioned, us discussing just family stuff and having those conversations. And it's, I think we're both kind of in that same spot as, that sandwich generation where you're caring for kids at the same time being aware of what's going on with your parents and helping them and guide them. And that's a really challenging
I'm glad
place
that you
to
brought
be.
that up. I'm glad that you brought that up because the sandwich generation is really the focal point here. If you
Mm,
look at, our industry as a whole, right? We are about to, head into the largest demographic transformation that this industry has ever seen. And what
yeah.
that means is that, we have, 70 million baby boomers who are eventually going to make their way into that category over the next decade, right? And those baby boomers, if you look at the statistics, right, they have not financially prepared for the next steps. Really, there's a significant portion of the baby boomers that just haven't even saved at all. I want to say it's like 54% that have not saved anything.
Wow.
And that is obviously an issue. If you look at senior living as a whole and where we've come over the past, 3 decades, when we opened our doors to our first assisted living in 1998, the rents were only less than $3,000. Obviously, if you look at how they have increased and increased and increased over time, that has had a huge economic impact on our industry, and
Sure.
those rates are just going to continue to increase and increase. That creates this gap of affordability where this next generation are not necessarily able to afford what we are all selling.
Mm.
And we have to take a step back and we have to look at the population as a whole. And we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to help everybody that is going to be aging, not just those who did save and did plan and can afford senior living. That's wonderful for those people. But we need to have solutions for those that aren't as lucky.
Sure.
And in my properties, I also offer affordable components. So I have Medicaid funding, and we also bring people on and get them, veterans aid in attendance and different VA funding. And we're starting to see, the possible shift of those things having cuts.
Yeah.
We're starting to see some reduced, service days and Medicaid funding. And I feel like that's just going to be the start. And if those programs start to get cut, then that's going to take the already limited slots for those who need affordable support to come in. That's going to reduce that even further.
Mm.
So you have even more of this, gap of affordability and equitable access to all, right? So there's just a bigger issue at hand. And I think that's kind of where this idea came from. You have the sandwich generation, like you just said, which is really us of, we have children, we have families, we have big careers, and there's a lot happening in our world. And then you tack on, a sick parent or an aging parent who now needs more and more support. It can feel super overwhelming and you can feel at a loss of like, what do I even do now? How do I afford next steps? Where do we even begin? So I think it's, getting that education component out there so that way people can start learning before they hit that crisis situation
Sure.
is really, really going to be key and crucial in the success of the next generation.
Yeah. And I think about that. You said that hitting that crisis moment. And I think far too often, you know, probably too much in life that we don't make action until we hit that crisis moment.
Absolutely.
Um, how are you reaching out to families before they hit that crisis moment? Because I know when it comes to senior living marketing, we think about, I'd say that passive ways of connecting, whether it's direct mail, whether it's websites, social media. Then you have more of that high intent, which is paid search and ongoing
Yeah.
SEO. But you want to connect with them before it becomes, really that crisis moment. How are you going about that so you can get in front of some of the big conversations and maybe laying the groundwork earlier?
So, what we're doing right now is really trying to put our heads together and create all sorts of different guides and support systems that we can give out for free. So, if you go to our website, agingparentsolution.com, there's a page called Freebies. And if you go on there, which we're going to keep adding to and adding to, there's a bunch of resources on there. So, we have guides available like, what does your parent really expect from you?
Yeah.
You're feeling overwhelmed. How can we support you? What are some things that you can do? So there's just some basic guides on there. Senior Living 101, things to ask when you tour assisted livings. All of those resources are up there and available. We have some conversations on there as well for people, experts that we've talked to, and we'll keep dropping, more and more information. The more conversations we have with people, putting that back up for free resources. And the same goes as we continue creating these guides and these blogs and educational content that we can give away for free. People can join our mailing list. We're always also emailing free resources to our mailing list, because we feel like, that is necessary information and we don't want to withhold that from people. We want them to start to understand the questions that they should be asking. I
Mm.
think that they don't even know the questions that they should be asking. And I don't think they're going to know until they're really in the thick of it, right? That's usually when people realize and kind of snap out of it and are like, oh my gosh, like there's so much I need to know. So trying to educate people via social media, email marketing, paid advertising, of just trying to show people, you need to stop and think about this now,
Yeah,
especially
for
if you have
sure.
a parent that you're starting to have questions on. So there's a quiz on our website of, are you prepared? And there's some basic questions on there, and you're going to be able to assess out, how ready are you actually? Are you completely in the dark or are you pretty well informed? So our quiz is going to kind of guide you on where you land in that mix, and we can go from there.
That's incredible. And I love what you said about folks, thinking about what questions should you be asking. And as you were telling me about this, this is always a very I'd say, personal thing, and typically we don't think about it until we think about loved ones who are going through similar experiences, whether it's with their parents or a grandparent, and you realize how close it is to home. Um, and so I think about it almost like when people go through this, like you said, instead of getting in front of it, it's almost like get dropped into a maze. And
Mhm.
so they don't know how to navigate this maze. They don't know how to really how they got into it, and they don't know like really how they go about this new process. And that brings me to one quick question, because I know we spoke about just an aging parent. We mentioned dementia, but what are the top three emotional pain points that adult children face when they are trying to help their parents? What do you see some commonalities? I know we discussed from
Yes.
just their health and the financial side and the actual move, but what are some common pain points that kind of probably align all of this?
Sure. So, first and foremost is that they are feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling confused and overwhelmed and really unsure about what is the next best step to put in place with their parent without pissing them off, really, if we're going to be honest, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to step on their toes. There's a feeling of guilt, all right, associated with, I'm not being the best caregiver I can be if I'm going to, bring in care into the house or put them in a senior living community. There's a lot of guilt associated with making those decisions or taking
Mhm.
away somebody's license, right? They
Sure.
don't want to be the one responsible for taking away their loved one's independence. And I completely understand that. I've done it myself with, we're in charge of my husband's grandparents and we've taken away their license and we put them in senior living. I have firsthand, been through this entire process. And I know by doing that just how challenging it was. And the best advice I tell my clients is to just really stick with it, stick to your guns, but do it in baby steps. It's
Mm.
a lot of frequent conversations. It's a lot of the same conversation again and again and again. And I think the next biggest thing is communication. We need families to communicate with one another, right? First and foremost, we
Yeah.
need to try to get the families to be on the same page about what is best. And then we need the communication with the loved one to be clear and concise and try to get them to understand the best that they can. Sometimes they're not going to understand, right? Especially if there's dementia at play or, something more significant happening where, we really have to make the decision because it's in the best interest of their safety and their well-being. But ultimately trying to get them on board, right, is the next best step, which requires a lot of communication, a lot of baby stepping. They're not just going to be like, cool, yeah, I'm good to move. I'll leave my house after 45 years.
I
And
trust you. That sounds
yeah,
good. Just
yeah,
tell me
that's
where to
not
go
gonna
next.
happen, and anyone that's in senior living knows what they're seeing and knows these difficulties because it's stuff that we all see each and every single day.
Sure.
But it's just going to come down to all of those really, really heavy emotions. And we see, kids taking care of their parents and they want the best for their parents. Maybe they had an absolutely amazing childhood and they want to give back to their parent in
Hmm.
their golden years, what they gave to them as children.
Sure.
Not everyone's that lucky. I understand that, but a lot of people that's a hard thing for them to upset their parent,
Yeah.
in the end. Like they don't want to be, the bad guy. They don't want to be responsible for their parent being sad or upset, which I understand. But there's also, doing the right thing, doing the safe thing, and
Yeah.
doing what really ultimately your aging loved one likely needs.
Yeah, and like you said, it's doing the right thing and doing the safe thing,
Yeah,
and having those conversations are so important. And I think about with, it's two different conflicting emotions. On one side, the adult child decision maker, they're full of guilt. It's a
totally.
struggle, and they don't want to go down this path. It'd be a lot easier not to, but they understand the what would happen if they didn't. And on the other side, you have the senior who feels like it's a lack of control, and that's a tough
Absolutely.
place to be in the middle.
Yeah, the
And
lack of
and
control sends them spiraling for
oh,
sure.
yeah, for sure, and think like, yeah, when you put yourselves in their shoes, you understand that. And so I'm sure that over time, with the family lineage and what you're doing at the Arbors and Ivy, I'm sure you got to see this firsthand. And I was going to ask, is that to me, like speaking with you, we get to connect at conferences and phone calls. I can sense that this is a passion for you. This is
Yeah.
definitely a passion project. Is that something over time that this has become aware where you said, we need to focus on this. We need to be a resource. What was there a point where you just said somebody needs to do something and I'm going to raise my hand?
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously being born into this industry as my
Yeah.
sister and I were, my cousin, we all kind of grew up in it. We've been, in senior housing working since we were 13. So we have always kind of been in the front row seat of watching, just always the interactions between families and, children and their parents and the difficulties. And I think over time, as I've, gotten older in my own life and my parents are getting older and my grandparents are getting older and needing more and more care, what you start to see when you have the experience of senior living behind you is that people want to bury their head in the sand
Hmm.
and hide from their reality. And because they're burying their heads in the sand, they let things go way too long. Even in my own family, we own assisted livings. You would think that this would just be like a no brainer. But it's not. Even with my grandparents, it's baby steps. It's, bringing people into their house, whether it's PT and OT skill, just to kind of get them strengthened up. Some private care if they're just falling short in a few places. But really starting to recognize that, we can't bury our heads in the sand. And I think that was really a turning point for us of like so many people who just tour us, right? And are saying, I'm just not ready, right? You
Hmm.
hear that a lot. Why aren't you going to make a move? Can I ask? Because we're just not ready. My mom's not there yet. Well, what would have to transpire for your mom to be ready, right? And
Yeah.
the answer, they don't really know, but we all know. And we know that that answer is a crisis. It's going to be a fall. It's going to be an accident. It's going to be a hospitalization. It's going to be dehydration. It's going to be
Yeah.
something that could have been helped had they had preventative measures in place. And I think that that is going to be the most important message is that if we put in preventative care, if we get out ahead of it, right, your parent and your loved one is going to have a much higher and better quality of life over time in their golden years if we're prepared and we have all of the right things in place, right? Even as simple as like we will do like home assessments. We can tell you, yeah, you don't have to move your mom right now. Let's just like look and make sure she's safe. Is she
Hmm.
okay at home? Like what can we be doing to, move those rugs and move those cords and make it a safe environment for her to stay at home? And then it's baby stepping. You know,
Sure.
can we just bring in somebody for an hour a day? Can we get some meals on wheels going? Can we get some small services? Can we go to the senior center for a few hours a day.
Yeah.
There's adult daycares. Can we do that? So we're going to help connect you with all of the right players. And so we have a network that we have built over 30 years of connecting people with the right people. And that's why I love going to conferences and meeting people like you, Larry, and other people who have the same passion that we do, because you need to know who to trust, right? And
Sure.
these families just don't. They can Google search somebody and they could be, making a great decision, but they could also be making a poor decision. And so we
Mhm.
want to give as much support and guidance as we can, given
Yeah.
our background.
There's so much information out there, and it can be information overload, and I'm
Oh yeah.
guessing it also becomes where it can confuse the process because you're probably reading 2 different things. I think it's great to have, like, this one, I would say, a one tried and true way to guide and
Yeah.
provide information from, respected minds who, it's not like you just started this, you're not just winging it and creating a blog about, really this supportive care and how to go about this. This is something that you've lived and your families have lived for a long time. So I appreciate that.
100%.
So the internet continues to be a place where you go for information.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for other senior living communities that want to provide more guidance, more information so they can, provide more of that groundwork to start these conversations so it doesn't become a crisis situation? But do you have any advice for other communities so they can maybe provide I don't know, a place so they can provide that support
Yeah,
and
so we're
communication
actually
before they get
I'm
to that
glad that you
point?
asked this, Larry. I'm really happy you brought this up. So, this is, something that we're turning it into an app. So that way it will be, easier to manage and easier to access.
That's great.
And then we're hoping to, work with other senior livings on just sharing our content. We want you to share our content
Hmm.
with your prospects and your families coming in,
Yeah.
because we feel like, education should be available to everybody first and
Yeah.
foremost. And if you're educating your future prospects and the families that are moving into your community, right? You're
Hmm.
setting a tone. We're setting a tone of, a what to expect after the sale, right? What can they expect after they move in? Because that can be a very transitional and confusing time for both
Sure.
the families and the loved one, of like, okay, I'm here, but what's next, right? Like, where do I navigate from here? And a lot of people still feel like, okay, I was the caregiver, so therefore now I need to be the caregiver supervisor. I need to oversee
Mhm.
everything that you're doing in the community for my loved one. But really, they have to relinquish that control. They have to understand that there are teams and teams of amazing support that is now available in senior living, especially as we navigate into this value based care. We have APRNs, you have audiologists, podiatrists, PT, OT, skilled, you have hospice, you have, you name it, right? And we have it now. We have telehealth, behavioral health within all of our communities. We are so lucky to have the resources that we now have at our fingertips. And so, adding in that educational component is simply going to give the families that come into these communities the understanding that they truly need to kind of let go, to kind
Yeah.
of say, okay, I trust in this process. I trust you. I know what you have going on. I understand the aging process, and that my parent, likely is going to continue the aging progression and may not recover to their baseline again and again and again. But that's a misunderstanding with families, right? A lot of families are in denial and
Mhm.
they truly believe my mom's going to come out of this.
Yeah.
We've even heard like my mom could recover from this dementia. And we have to educate, because education leads to understanding,
Yeah.
and misunderstanding is there because of denial and emotions, right? So there's just a whole lot of things to juggle when it comes to education, but I think it's going to be the key to the future success of the residents that we bring into our communities.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm so glad that you said that about the app. I feel like that's a go-to for
Yeah,
everyone these days, and to have that resource, I think that's something that a lot of families need is a North Star.
100%.
We don't know what that North Star is. I mean, I feel like there's so many factors of life where it's like every step is new for us. I don't care if it's, like once you get out of college, that's a new phase. You have kids, those are a new phase. You and I speak about this all the time. We have, kids that are in their teens and moving forward. These are new phases. This is another phase that I think we need to provide guidance because of the emotional weight, the financial weight. Like there's so much there that, like you said at the beginning, we need to get ahead of these conversations
I
and
mean,
have
you
that
just brought up another
awareness.
great point, Larry, that I like to bring up. So, when you have babies, right, and or
Mhm.
toddlers or, teens or whatever, how many resources really are there, right? There's books,
Books and books
there's
and books.
websites, there's
Yeah.
classes, there's courses, there's all sorts of communities that you can join that really, you build community with people going through the same situation. Maybe it's the terrible twos, or maybe it's, teenage boys,
Yeah.
or, there's different kind of stages, right, as we raise our children. And there are resources available for every single stage. Why isn't there resources available for this enormous phase of life that
Mhm.
nobody is talking about?
Yeah.
There is nothing there to guide these people who are just so confused and so overwhelmed and trying to manage and juggle their own day-to-day lives. And that's what we're going to be there for them. Is we're going to help you, take you by the hand, walk you through it and show you the way, making your life a whole lot easier.
I love, again, I'm gonna go back to the word passion. I hear the passion and I hear the word I just hear the passion in your voice. And when you speak about this and the importance, it's you see this as something that you have to do. And I think that's incredible. That you definitely just want to give back and say, like, we this is needed in society. We want to fill that void. So
It really is.
thank you for that. And
Thank you for
also
having me.
I wrote something down, which is the power of community.
Yes,
And whether it's a community of within the senior living space, we connect at conferences. It's the power of community within a network and on the website, so people who are struggling through some of the same situations can connect. It's just
absolutely.
the power of being in a community, and like you said, even if it's not actually moving into a residence, but the power of connecting with others. It's a power of community.
Even
Thank
if it's
you.
just, like, griping, just saying, like, "I'm in this
Yes.
situation, I don't know what to do with my parent, and they just keep pushing back and pushing back.
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated, and I just wanna, make a difference in their life," and just that alone, hearing that another person is in the same predicament,
Yeah.
is just it can make all the difference in the
It
world. You're
does.
not in it alone.
Yeah, because it becomes an echo chamber in your head.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if you don't hear from others and hear someone going through the same situation, you get into your head, am I doing the right thing? Am I going about this the right way? Am I being like it? There's a lot of noise,
Oh, for
and
sure.
having that community helps us kind of work some of that out. And
Yeah.
having someone else, have that an empathetic ear and voice to have a response. Thank you so much. Just so walking away from this conversation, I think you and I can speak another 30 minutes. Sometime I want to
I
have you back
know.
and really speak about the family dynamics themselves because
Yeah.
you get into the, with the kids. And like you said, there tends to be that one child who kind of carries the weight.
Yes.
And, how can we help on that front and bring families together? That's a different conversation. But
It is, yeah.
what's your advice to other communities at this point in providing, guidance to families, loved ones, and just trying to bring people together to set the stage for a smoother transition into
I
these
would
next
say
phases?
I would say that because we're all just so in it, right? That there's just this assumption that everybody has the same knowledge and understanding that we all have. And I think that even when people tour, we're just as guilty of it as well. It's just like you're making assumptions that they already have the foundational information that they need really to make, a great choice for their parent, and they're really missing that foundation. So I think, it is our responsibility in this industry to provide them with the right foundation and the right resources and point them in the right direction. Even if we can't help them, even if they're not going to move into our community, give them the next resources. We always have done that in our business. We will give you to a competitor if it's a better fit. We will give you home care names. We will give you, because it's our job to case manage to some degree,
Yeah,
right?
for
It
sure.
is. It is our responsibility to do what's best. And that means providing these people the information that they need that's in their best interest. So that's my advice is stop withholding and start sharing.
That's incredible. I'm just kind of soaking that up, to be honest with you, Sarah. Like every time I get to have a conversation on this platform, I always think about like there's that walk away phrase. I'm like, we need to have like t-shirts made with these phrases. And when you said it is our responsibility, I think that's so powerful. And then when you said, stop withholding and start sharing. Man, this is what this overall community is about. Going back to the power of
100%.
community. Sarah, I'm a big fan of you, your team, and your efforts. Where can people find, get more information to learn more about what all you're doing?
They can come to theagingparentsolution.com or follow us on Instagram, The Aging Parent Solution, also on Facebook. Lots of exciting stuff happening over there. So come join us.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a part of this,
Oh my
and
gosh. Thank you so much,
go.
Larry. This was
Yeah,
great.
always good speaking with you, Sarah.
You too.
A huge thank you to Sara Robertson for sharing not just her expertise, but her heart. If there's one thing this conversation made clear, it's that our role as senior living marketers goes far beyond generating leads. We are guides, advocates, and educators for families navigating some of life's most emotional decisions. Here are a few takeaways that I made notes of in this conversation. First, create educational content families can use today. Don't wait for them to reach out. Build trust early with resources, guides, checklists, videos that can help families before they're in crisis. Second, build community, not just campaigns. Make space for families to connect. Whether it's through support groups, online forums, or neighborhood workshops, give them more than marketing. Give them belonging. And third, audit your message for empathy. Look at your website, emails, and tours. Are you speaking to the real emotions that families carry, which might be fear, guilt, or confusion? If not, now's the time to shift. Because this isn't just about selling a service, it's about meeting people in the moment that they need you most. Again, thank you, Sarah, and until next time, let's go create some meaningful connections.